Good evening. We begin by acknowledging that the Weisman Art Museum is located on the traditional and contemporary land of the Dakota people. We aspire to honor and respect the Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, by incorporating Indigenous knowledge in our work and establishing meaningful reciprocal relationships with carriers of Indigenous knowledge and with communities. I'm Katie Covey-Spanier, Director of Public Programming and Student Engagement at the Weisman Art Museum. Tonight, we'll hear from Dr. Margaret Rose Vendryes, who in 1997 published an essay, Hanging on Their Walls, an art commentary on lynching, the forgotten 1935 exhibition in the anthology Race Consciousness, African American Studies for the New Century. That new century is now a generation old. Recent protests demanding an end to violence against Black people, particularly Black men, are echoed in the art that populated that brief and forgotten 1935 exhibition. Tonight, Vendryes will revisit her 1997 essay in light of Hale Woodruff's prints in the pressing issues, Printmaking as Social Justice in 1930s United States, on view at the Weisman Art Museum, and the sensitivities given to presenting the lynching subject matter. The theme of violence against Black men has engaged African American artists since 1935 in myriad and more caustic ways than their forefathers, who boldly displayed work during the height of Jim Crow segregation in a blatantly political exhibition calling for lawmakers to end lynching. After Margaret's presentation tonight, we will be joined in conversation with Weisman Art Museum curator, Dr. Diane Mullen. Before we begin, I would like to thank the voters in Minnesota for supporting the operational budget of our museum through funds from the Minnesota State Arts Board. Thank you to the Wells Fargo Foundation Minnesota and for supporting our operational budget. I'm grateful to my colleagues at the Weisman Art Museum for helping to make this event happen this evening. As we begin our conversation, we invite you to submit questions and thoughts through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will respond to your question in the Q&A period after the presentation. You may upvote the questions you're interested in by clicking the like button, and questions with more votes will rise to the top of the queue. We will be recording tonight's event, and it will be posted to the Weisman's YouTube channel. To ensure the event remains accessible to all, we are incorporating live captioning and ASL video interpreters so all may participate. During a screen share, if the ASL video feed is too large or too small, attendees may drag the vertical divider left or right to increase or decrease the size of both the shared content and the video feeds. Live captioning is an option you can select to have visible to turn on. Captioning selects Show Subtitles in the drop-down menu under the Live Transcription tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And now, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Margaret Rose Vendryes. Dr. Vendryes is an art historian, visual artist, and curator. She received her BA in Fine Arts from Amherst College, Master's in Art History from Tulane University, and PhD in Art History from Princeton University. She taught at Princeton University and Amherst College before entering the faculty at York College and the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, where she received tenure in 2006. Among several honors, Vendryes held an American Association of University Women Fellowship and was a scholar in residence at the Schoenberg Center for Research in Black Culture. In 2008, University Press of Mississippi published Vendryes' book, Barthé, A Life in Sculpture, the first comprehensive monograph of the late African-American sculptor Richmond Barthé. Vendryes has had solo exhibitions of her African Diva Project painting series centered on African aesthetics and its intersection with popular Black music and visual culture. Solo exhibitions were held in Boston, New York City, and Biloxi, Mississippi, as well as in several group shows over the last 2 decades. Vendryes is currently Professor of Art History, Chair of the Department of Performing and Fine Arts, and Director of the Fine Arts Gallery at York College. And now I am so pleased to welcome Dr. Vendryes to the screen.
Hi. Thank you so much. That was a great introduction, Katie. And I want to begin by commending the Weisman Museum at the university for seizing this teachable moment and for inviting me to revisit this topic that continues to be relevant in what is nearly a century since visual artists accepted the challenge and the call to use their work and their talents to incite change. Over 20 years since I put my artist historian mind to this topic. And I wish I could say that it was buried under a lot of dust, but I can't, because there was so much relevant information still right there on the surface when I went and reread what I had written back in 1997. So I'm going to ask the images that I'm going to share with you in a few minutes to carry the weight of what it is that I want to say. And hopefully, I believe that they will incite you to ask some poignant questions about the past and the future and what you're going to see. I have chosen to show a video to open, which was created by a documentarian by the name of Go Davis. Go Davis also found me, as Katie did, around my 1997 essay on lynching, and he had begun a documentary called American Lynching and gave me his promo sort of trailer of it. And when I went to see whether or not I could find out what Goad was up to, I found out that he had passed away in 2010 and that the documentary was never made. And so I pay tribute to his efforts, and I share with you today that 9-minute promo for American Lynching by Go Davis. And then I will begin my slide presentation and my commentary about the images that I've gathered for you tonight.
We begin this week with so much emotion all across the country.
Hang on a second. It should be at another spot. So let me hold on a second and regroup. As much as I use this machinery a lot, I should know better. So let me come back to you and screen share again. I want you to see nothing but the images. You don't really need to see me. And here we go with Go Davis's trailer for American Lynchings.
Southern trees, barren, strange fruit.
To lynch, to execute or punish violently without a lawful trial. It's the American disease. It has been with us throughout our history, and it's still with us today.
Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze.
The victims have been African Americans, Mormon missionaries to Tennessee, Italians in New Orleans. They've been union activists and Jewish Americans, Australians in the Wild West, Chinese laborers, homosexuals, and this young man, Michael Donald, lynched in 1981 in Mobile, Alabama. Or these two, who hang from a tree in Marion, Indiana. It was August the 7th, 1930. James Cameron will never forget the day.
Those are my two buddies hanging on the tree. I was 16 years old. Thomas Shipp was 18 and Abel Smith was 19. What happened was the mob came into the jail and they got Tommy out first. He was right below me on the first floor. They beat him, and instead of taking him up to the courthouse square, which was just a half a block away from the jail, 150 feet away, they took him around from this side of the jail to the other side and hung him on the jail windows where Abe was incarcerated in that particular cell block. Now, no doubt Abe had probably run back there and probably was looking at him as they hung him from the windows on the outside of his cell block. Then 15 or 20 minutes later, after celebrating that kill, they came back in, they got Abe out, they beat him to death, drug him past the alley here, and I couldn't see anymore. And then a half a block away, they hung him on the tree. Then they went back and took Tommy down to the jail window where they'd hung him. And while he was back there, they stripped the clothes off of him for souvenirs. And they had to use the robes of the Klan to cover him up. And they dragged him up to the courthouse square and hung him alongside of Abe. And then they came back to get me. We want Cameron, we want Cameron, we want Cameron. And I thought I would die. I felt like I was in a rubber suit and ice was packed all around me. I just felt cold and clammy. They came back up in the cell block, opened the door, walked in. They said, Cameron's in here, and said, we're gonna let every goddamn one of you niggas. And when he said that, half of those blacks in there fell down on their hands and knees and started to crawl around like trained animals, like seals in a circus. And they were hugging the pant legs of the mobsters and kissing their hands and crying like babes lost in the woods. And they were saying, Mr. White folks, please don't hang us. We ain't nothing but a bunch of poor niggas in there for train riding that boy in any honest he ain't. Now they were trying to save me in the best way they knew how. There was whooping and hollering going on. It was the loudest racket I've ever seen in my life. And finally, this guy said, take them all out and lynch him. And when he said that, this other 16-year-old boy, Charles Haynes, he raised his hand and said, it wasn't none of us, mister, that's him right there. And he pointed his finger at me like that. And when he did that, the mob closed in on me and they beat me in my cell block. They dragged me out down to the first floor and out into the streets. And when they got out into the street, the mob hollered, we got him, we got him, we got him. And the police was helping the mob. The monitored Klansmen with their robes on was helping the police to clear the path through the mob so they could get me up to the tree where Tom and Abe was hanging with a rope around their neck. And as they were beating me up to the tree, I kept looking to the right and to the left and begging for help and telling people to help me that I hadn't done anything to deserve this. And nothing happened. They got me up to the tree. They put the rope around my neck and they threw the end of the rope over the limb of the tree. And they were getting ready to pull me up when I prayed to God. I said, Lord, have mercy, forgive me my sins. As soon as I prayed, a voice came out that said, take this boy back. He had nothing to do with any killing or raping. And that voice came from far away, like drifting down, like these echoes in the movies you hear with these spooky voices. And that mob that had already killed 2 human beings, those hands became soft and kind and tender, and they took that rope off my neck and they allowed me to stumble and stagger back to the jail, which was just a half a block away.
As the 20th century dawned, many Americans not only failed to condemn the pervasive practice of lynching, they often condoned it.
Very strange fruit, not only.
Some lynchings were festive affairs. Newspaper ads would attract large crowds requiring the booking of extra excursion cars on trains. Law enforcement turned a blind eye. What was it like to witness a lynching or to participate?
Man, a lynching, no matter how big a crowd it is, only about 25 or 30 people do all the participatory work. The rest of them are just standing there looking. onlookers, spectators. They could have stopped that mob that night. They could have said, hey, we don't want this to happen in our city. We're not going to stand for it. But no, they stood there and silently they gave consent.
What kind of people make up a lynch mob?
Ordinary people, your neighbors, people you wouldn't think. And then after it's over with, they see what they've done, they're ashamed of themselves. But they get caught up in that mob hysteria. Good people, bad people, mild people, angry people, loving people, church-going people. All of them get caught up in that mob hysteria.
In 1901, Mark Twain became outraged at a lynching that had happened in his home state of Missouri. Incensed, he wrote his famous essay called The United States of Lyncherdom.
Picture the scene in your mind and soberly ponder it. Then multiply it by 115. Add 88. Place the 203 in a row, allowing 600 feet of space for each human torch, so that there may be viewing room around it for 5,000 Christian American men, women, and children, youths and maidens. Make it night for grim effect. Have the show in a gradually rising plane, and let the course of the stakes be uphill. The eye can then take in the whole line of 24 miles of blood and flesh bonfires unbroken.
The story of American lynchings has never been the subject of a feature-length documentary. And yet even now we still hear lynching's grim but clear echoes. James Byrd dragged to his death on the night of June 6, 1998 in Jasper, Texas. And Matthew Shepard bludgeoned to death on October 7, 1998 in Laramie, Wyoming.
This is a story that needs to be told about the lynchings in this country. It should be told in all its truthfulness, in all its clarity, in all its reasons.
Thank you for allowing me to have you sit through what Goat Davis, only a fraction of the research that he did to create a documentary on lynching that still does not exist for the public to see. So Wikipedia contributors offer a variety of ways to approach US lynching, and that is too long to read and navigate, as you see what it says, navigate comfortably, and remains open to continuous editing, which is what makes Wikipedia an infinitely confounding and yet absolutely valuable resource. This is just one of multiple pages of published books available on this topic. And in 1999, James Allen published Without Sanctuary, Lynching Photography in America, which was based on his collection. And I give you a quote from, and you can find Without Sanctuary online pretty easily as well. There's a YouTube documentary as well. But what Allen has says that the almost 100 images that he has reproduced in this book is a testament to the camera's ability to make us remember what we often choose to forget. Revisiting my work also led me to this novel that is, for me, a jarring image to grace the cover of a book written by a Black woman of my generation. But time is said to heal all wounds. As you can imagine, my image files are dense. I've been teaching art history for almost 30 years now, and some images never seem to be useful and telling without much need for commentary. In fact, much of what I will show you tonight speaks for itself. Who doesn't know Darwin? a wildly popular late 19th century naturalist who published images like this one, comparing Black people to dressed up wild animals. Or that what is now marketed as sought after and difficult to find Black Americana collectibles were in their time despicable affronts to the character of Black people. Who played these games? Who did those white children become? This is how National Geographic forefronted their reasons for displaying imagery that is horrific, but historically significant to face head on. Unprepared to take advantage of a teachable moment, the Weisman Art Museum, where the present exhibition originated, was unable to address the full range of social image making in 1930s America. So they chose to remove 2 Hale Woodruff prints. Woodruff is also, incidentally, the only Black artist represented in the exhibition. It was a coincidence that National Geographic History of Lynching, posted in June 2020, begins with this photograph taken the very year an art commentary on lynching was presented. Let me keep going. I'm trying to do 2 things at once. Anyway, so it was 1935 that this photograph was taken. 1935 was when an art commentary on lynching was presented in New York City and curated by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, what we now recognize as the NAACP, and the College Art Association, also considered and better known as the CAA. What struck me most in the photograph was the children. Bringing to mind Reginald Lamar's drawing, which was created for an art commentary on lynching, questioning the impact these acts of violence had on bystanders, like these 2 very young witnesses, one looking right into the camera. The cover of the very modest brochure for an art commentary on lynching that I show you here alluded to the potential of an escape, but also the plight of a 19th century slave is brought to mind as well. The brochure was illustrated and held the names of 183 supporters of an anti-lynching legislation that did not pass. And that legislation reemerged in 2018, brought to the Senate by the body's 3 Black members, Kamala Harris, now our Vice President, Cory Booker, and Tim Scott. The legislation had passed the Senate unanimously on December 19th in 2018, but the bill died because it was not passed by the House before the 115th Congress ended in January of 2019. So it might actually appear again now that we have Vice President Harris in place. The male body, as strong and sensuous, creates an even more upsetting spectacle of the stereotype Black man as sexual predator and beast. These are all pieces that were in the art commentary in 1935. In my essay, I pointed out that the white artists rendered the Black victim as alive, while the Black artist generally rendered them as already passed. Richmond Barté here, his mother was created in the year prior and actually was used by Walter White of the NAACP as a draw for other artists to be a part of the exhibition, even though Barté declined to show this piece in it. He was aligned with those artists who referenced Christian iconography, but he wanted a wider audience for this near life-size damnation of lynching. And he did not exhibit it in the show, but held it back until the 1939 World's Fair. And I'll share a quote with you from Barthe, where he says that this young man, his worries are over. It is those that are left behind in fear for their own lives that are the ones that we should be worried about. Samuel Brown, on the other side, his lynching of 1934 was indeed in the show, and it was one of the rare inclusions that used color. And so we have this wonderful, well-executed watercolor that took place right before World War II was beginning to show itself in Europe. And so we have this birch tree, which also looks like camouflage. And we have the blood dripping from this lynched man's body, and then the red that shows up on the faces of those in the audience below him. The alignment of Jesus Christ's execution on the cross with the lynching of Black men was made literal during the earlier New Negro Arts Renaissance, and it continued into the years thereafter. I show you two representations here. Dark scenes of lamentation were a call to arms. But who would see this and be moved to rise up against lynching in a tangible way? Who could afford to do so when artists were looking for supporters, for patrons? Both of these works deliver a real punch to the guts, but Sternberg's print was included in the 1935 show, and Alston's drawings were not. A standout in the exhibition and an unusual composition for Noguchi, who raged with disgust at a photograph that should not have existed, but one that he used in order to model this work of art. That the US Postal Service would deliver a postcard like this is inconceivable today, but it is preserved to remind us of how inhumane we can be to our own brother men. Finally, these are the two prints that brought me here. The two prints that are in the exhibition that can be seen at the Weisman right now. And I'm showing you how they were displayed on a page where Alan Locke, philosopher, Rhodes Scholar, Harvard graduate, included them side by side, adding an unapologetically political tone to what was the first survey of American art that was consciously racially integrated. Here, Woodruff offers a before and after narrative with his prints, which, like most of the work in an art commentary on lynching, could be printed again and again, hence the 1938 date here. Get Up centers a Black man fully dressed, a crisp white shirt, buttoned down, belted trousers, surrounded by his white executioners who are described in almost portrait-like precision. By Parties Unknown is the aftermath, a man torn to shreds by no one in particular. The resonance of the connection to Jesus Christ has been felt over the generations, and this is a correlation strangely perpetuated by the Ku Klux Klan. Thelma Golden's Black Male Show at the Whitney Museum of American Art in 1994 included this example by Renee Cox, which is writ large. It's a very large work of art. I'm a mother of 2 adult Black men. These images, no matter how skillfully rendered or formally impressive, are heart-wrenching to contemplate. Can art make change or only point out the need for change? Are we paying attention? Tracy Chapman's blood red violent was probably not an arbitrary choice. Subtleties like Mel Edwards' Lynch fragment series, where he has welded together found objects that speak to us in a different way once we know what his series is about, or just illusions like the dangling feet on the left of Aaron Douglas's very large mural about aspects of Negro life. The outrage of an artist who is a photographer and uses photography to implicate the human behind the camera as complicit in this lynching, in much the same way that I felt when watching the phone recorded video of George Floyd's murder last year. The repercussions of a Black man looking is ingrained in my psyche and in every film that even suggests what might happen because of this kind of looking. For me, that puts that movie in the horror category. Dred Scott made this work in response to the 2015 killing of Walter Scott, an unarmed Black man by a white police officer in North Charleston, South Carolina. He did this to bring the current political moment into conversation with the past. There were weeks on end when the NAACP flag remained in place, reporting deaths. Emmett Till was killed on August 28, 1955. 20 years later, a white artist is called out for stepping over a line into territory where she had no business going. African-American artist, this is Parker Bright, standing there wearing a t-shirt with Black Death spectacle written on the back. He stood for several hours in front of open casket over several days, demanding not only that the painting be removed from the Whitney Biennial, but that it be destroyed. His statement was, "It is not acceptable for a white person to transmute Black suffering into profit." Emmett Till died because a white woman lied about their brief interaction. Lynching imagery is powerful and still relevant, but the handling of it has changed. Equally blatant as Kara Walker sees it, most definitely yet. Still impactful, absolutely. Kara Walker, whose work has explored race, sexuality, and violence, spoke to the open casket, the history of painting. I'm going to quote her. She said, "The history of painting is full of graphic violence and narratives that don't necessarily belong to the artist's own life. As are we all. I am more than a woman, more than the descendant of Africa, more than father's daughter, more than Black, more than the sum of my experiences thus far. Our art often lasts longer than the controversies that greet it. I say this as a shout to every artist and artwork that gives rise to vocal outrage. Perhaps it too gives rise to deeper inquiries and better art. I see that attitudes are changing as well. The painting next to Kara's is of an artist that's up and coming, Leanne Williams. And Leanne Williams, I'm going to quote her as well. She says here that her Leisure and Unseen series, of which Picnic is one of them, delves into the blurry gray of racial tokenism. I often find myself in communities made up of affluent whites. The paintings engage the strain of leisure, privilege, or simply whiteness in contrast to my Blackness, my family struggles, and dialogues within the Black community. Rather than highlighting Blacks as subjects, the work reveals the act of not seeing. A Black artist can, white artists cannot, should not go there. Gary Simons writes, I struggle not just to engage, but to haunt the viewer. There's a strength in the absence of presence that I am interested in. This idea of bringing a child's game into play around the iconography of lynching. And the issue around Philip Guston's shows being postponed during this time of upheaval, this time of reckoning around racial injustice. That there were many artists and writers and curators who signed petitions that the postponement not happen and that Guston's work be set forward. That the misunderstandings need not be allowed to stand. What were Black artists thinking about and making in 1997 while I was writing that essay? As I was thinking about how to approach this topic, Oprah Winfrey funded Beloved, and one of my inspirational artists, Betty Saar, made a call to arms. A few weeks ago, I was in my mask at the Morgan Library after having gathered the courage to go out to see Betty Saar's sketchbook show there days before it closed. And there it was, as I was thinking about this presentation, a call to arms. Fists and rifles, and a reminder that the work is not yet done. This is my photograph of the Morgan Library display case showing Harris's important book, which is still in print, and I have a copy. I'm going to read you the caption that was on the wall in the Morgan. The Black Book is an anthology of photographs, newspaper clippings, quotations, sheet music, patent applications, advertisements, and other ephemera, which together form a picture of Black life in America. The volume, assembled by Middleton A. Harris under the editorial eye of Toni Morrison, whose uncredited poem appears on the back jacket, is unflinching in its documentation of slavery, racially motivated violence, and the perpetuation of negative stereotypes. Saar was in the midst of her own reclamation of racist imagery when the book was published, having produced The Liberation of Aunt Jemima, which is very well known, 2 years earlier. In a call to arms, displayed here, Saar stenciled the Langston Hughes excerpt seen here onto a vintage watchboard, where it joins other imagery to create a narrative of Black liberation. I returned to my desk and my computer and my essay, feeling that in that year, there was a lot going on for artists. and a lot of looking back and looking forward. Inciting revolution is not new for artists of African descent. What is unsettling is the persistent need to rise up in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusions. These were neighbors, Woodrow pictured. They lived in the same community, yet this could happen. Newly named mandates have within too short a time become an easy acronym, carefully ordered in order to avoid this. Memorials to lost lives are moving placemaking and space-taking efforts, but a memorial in Montgomery, Alabama is not enough. We have to be met where we are in our schools, homes, workplaces, and entertainment venues with the need to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion from now on. Here is just one of many recent examples of how visual artists and cultural institutions can expose the need to restructure our relationships with each other as communities and individuals and attempt to heal very deep wounds. It's not BLM. It is Black Lives Matter. Say it, believe it, and live it.
To their what?
That's the
Thank you. I'll bring back on my video if you folks will let me. Hello again.
Hi, Dr. Vendryes. Wow. Thank you so much for this presentation. I had so many questions that I could never ask them all tonight, but I do have a few, and I do see some coming in. So I want to make sure that the people who are here, I have been wanting to tell you this for days since I relooked at that essay, that I wanted you to know that I really admire people who look at exhibitions, at art exhibitions, as texts and historical evidence. And it's such a masterful job that you did with that in 1997 that it's always wows me every time, and it did again. And I also want to say that I really admire your willingness to practice relooking, again at it and talking about it. And you did a lot that I could interpret in terms of what your relooking and rethinking was about. But I was wondering if you could expound, just as the first question, not simply did things change. It seems like things change. Like, for instance, I know in your essay you mentioned that you talk about it being a forgotten exhibition. And by the end of your essay, and by the end of tonight, I was like, it's a little bit, as an art historian, a little bit also a neglected exhibition, in at least an art history sense. Do you think that? And are there, you maybe don't have that change, but I wonder if there's things that you did change your mind on. It seems like from your presentation, it strengthened some of your feelings about what you were talking about. But I'm wondering if you can reflect on that more, a little more.
Well, in terms of, I had to reread it too, which
yeah. Right.
Some of the things that I said, I still stand on, but there were things that I said that I was wondering, I was being a little bit more utopian than I am now. And that was written in the year that I completed my doctorate. So I was still a graduate student. And I was also thinking, and it came out of an actual presentation as well. It was a graduate conference presentation that we were invited to create this anthology around. I believe I said in there that lynching had been obliterated. And I think what I meant was the reporting had stopped.
Oh.
But that obviously, just from Go Davis's piece that I opened with, the 1981 lynching that he had actually been able to get a photograph of, was not really on my radar. If you rethink this idea that lynching is not literally hanging from a tree, but that, that violence and that murder of particular people without any judicial interaction at all is what a lynching really is. So I believe I was more hopeful. I was also very skeptical about how powerful works of art could be. A lot of that came from how difficult it was for me to find a lot of the work that was in that show.
Yeah.
And some of it is, who wants to wake up to some of these images? I am sure they're in portfolios somewhere, but they don't come out on the walls of museums or homes of people who might actually own these works of art. So there's a need for the kind of social practice that we have now, that is this sort of slap in the face, wake up kind of art. But then we have to think about how these artists are supported. How do they survive as artists? And how we actually embrace them as being these kinds of social practice people that want to make us aware through looking. I mean, we have come to a place now in our culture where everybody's waiting for the video. I mean, everything is so visually driven, and so few people know how to read images.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary. You know, and once you become an image reader, there's no going back. You know, you can't unlearn how to approach visual material and works of art in a manner that requires you to look deeper than what's on the surface. I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did.
Thank you for asking.
Hearing you talk about it, because I kept thinking, was this art history's fault? Or thinking in '97, I wasn't thinking about the obliterate comment, but I did notice that. I said, I'm thinking that was said in '97, but there were a few other instances in there, like I was saying, you know, forgotten as opposed to neglected. And in '97, I can see why you might have said.
Yeah, I think it was forgotten. That's in my title too, isn't it?
To be thinking, forgetting about it was, but it seems like an active. It seems even more active, and I think that the WPA Prince. It's nice to bring you here with this WPA exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
So Cranard, Illinois, the state of Illinois, we have a lot at the University of Minnesota from the Minnesota program, and
right.
I was talking to the curator there because about 10 years ago, actually, believe it or not, we did. At the 75th anniversary time, they asked museums, I don't know if you know this, but they asked museums that they knew had repositories of these, because you were talking about the things that came into the museum, but they would never show. And they said, hey, we would like people to do shows. And we did one. And so did the Cranard. We talked about the differences of what was collected in Illinois.
Right. You should see the collection in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I found some of these things, so I know it well. So those are very interesting, very, very interesting things that you said. I said, oh yeah, and then there was this, but we felt like when they reached out, when the trust reached out, they were really trying to figure out where all that stuff
what to do with now, right? In retrospect.
So people were fascinated. They loved that exhibition. And I was just starting working at the Weisman when I did it, and people went crazy for it. They loved it. I mean, just because of all the things we uncovered about the certain rules and the different way artists were paid, they were surprised to see abstractionists. And so just getting a look at that in a more full way. So seeing this now and looking at particularly these ones that are so politically chosen by the Cranard, really was another step of thinking about that. But seeing that saying, oh yeah, those are the things nobody wanted. And it's true. They were in all the basements. And so it was a really interesting project that we did. And I thought that was really interesting in there too, that notion of, you know, on the one hand, the freedom that they got the money, but that they were then throwaways, you know, right?
Yeah. They were working for hire.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? They really had no say over what would become of the works of art. And one of the reasons I think that I wanted to use forget was because this is my era that I did most of my research in for my dissertation and for my master's work at Tulane. And I had never heard of this exhibition.
That is interesting. I've had a similar thing happen to me with history of photography and coming across the Frederick Douglass book and it's a book, but as well was an exhibition of the fact what he wrote about photography. How is that not in any one of those books?
Yes, because the focus
how come that wasn't
different?
Yeah, so I saw that in your voice here in '97.
But you know what? It took African Americans to choose art history.
I agree. I think that's.
I mean, I have to tell you that I know that when I began looking at writing art history as an undergraduate, I could actually use primary material because nobody wrote about this. Right. I mean, I wrote about Archibald J. Motley, who's a big deal now, you know, and I could go and meet his son and look at the originals on his son's wall and look at the letters because no one had written about him.
Yeah.
So it took African Americans to find art history as a place to do important work for the historical record within the visual arts that makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, then you are such a great player in that game, obviously.
Thank you.
Or that history.
Thank you. It's been good work.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
that's
been
what
good
history is
work.
for.
I have
So
no
I was going to ask you
regret.
about that, the politics, history. It's kind of obvious. It's a dumb question because obviously you think of it as a political, socially motivated, social activist act to get those things down for the record and repair
Right.
in the historical record. So it's if you, I felt it in that, and I feel this too. I wanted to ask you something else about your use of sarcasm, but I'm seeing so many questions. So very quickly, you're talking about the sarcasm of the artists, and particularly Samuel Brown. And I was wondering, and I loved seeing the documentary trailer there, or the preview, that they mentioned Mark Twain. You mentioned Mark Twain because I was thinking Dave Chappelle just got the Mark Twain American Comedy.
I know, right?
Comments, his comments about their insurrection and the irony of that. So I thought, I think she means irony because it's such a high order of, you were talking about this comedy, you said it's layered with sarcasm that white people didn't see. In some ways, we know that about gay rights. And these jokes that people couldn't see. Now you're like, oh, really? You missed that? So I was thinking that was really interesting to me that you mentioned that, and that was something I thought. Did you mean irony? But I mean, because sarcasm starts to, but I understand in '97. But I'm interested too in that notion of how there is that subculture of humor inside the group.
Yes, most definitely.
Gay artists.
And Black artists need not be grim. You know? You know, even though there is a call to use your work as something to make change, to make a difference, to offer another way of understanding how we fit into the nation's fabric. So the majority of us art makers, and I include myself in there too, we find a way to use what is close to us and then what can belong to the bigger world as well, in order for us to be marketable and in order for us to be seen. I mean, being a visual artist for yourself doesn't go very far. The majority of us are making things in order to be seen.
Yeah. I understand that. I understand exactly what you're saying. And that it's moving and interesting. It's just been so interesting to be able to watch you thinking through the former you.
I know, right? And actually, except for the wrinkles and the gray, it's the same me.
It seems to pretty much. I felt like the change. I was going to ask you what's changed, and it really seems like it just has gotten stronger and more.
The level of inquiry that I go through when I accept a topic, it is sometimes surprises me. Because of how I see and what I believe I understand in what I see, it takes me forever, and it's gotten worse ever since we've had the internet.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just gotten worse. It really has, because there's so much that you can access and learn in that way through just being in front of this screen. In 1997, the majority of my time was piling up books from the stacks of various libraries and going to archives, where they take all your things away and you have to wear white gloves. And that has changed so much because so much has been scanned now. So there's no excuse that research doesn't have a depth to it. Anymore. I mean, today's scholars can begin here and then move out.
Yeah. I agree with that, and it's echoed in, I believe, in the community. People taking videos of arrests and all those things, and all how easy it is to pass around images, and there's a negative side to that too, which does lead me to, there's a couple of questions in here, of course, about the insurrection, but the first one I want to jump in and read you some of these questions. One is from Matt Rohn, who asked he says the NAACP sponsored the exhibition. Can you tell some of that story? And I was interested in this question because I'm going to piggyback on top of that, because there's a few that mention the NAACP. And I again feel I would be remiss to not mention the lawsuit being taken by our congressman, the congressman against Donald Trump, and Benny Thompson, and that being brought by the NAACP, to see what an important role the NAACP had in these motivating and protecting and using that 1871 Ku Klux Klan bill. It seemed kind of amazing to me that it happened. We just learned that yesterday, and I wanted you to talk more about the role of the NAACP too. And so Matt asked the same question. So I was wondering if you could sort of tell that story of how that happened.
Well, from what I remember, it was because of the Wagner-Costigan bill that was coming to the Congress that year in 1935, and that there was a great push prior to that to bring more people, to make more people aware that this bill was going to the Senate, and that it needed to be supported by the voters, and that it was necessary for the senators in the various areas of the country to support that bill, which of course we know that didn't happen. But the idea that an art exhibition on 57th Street, East 57th Street, could draw in the art-going audiences in that area, who are the elites of New York City, to spread the word. In other words, to get inculcated into the idea that this was something that needed to have a federal law against it, which seems like a no-brainer to us.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was that same legislation came forward again in 2018 with our vice president at the helm, and still did not pass. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me that we still don't have a law.
Yeah. Well, when we were working on this exhibition, that's there now from the Cranard, they had in their text, their label text, mentioning that it still had not passed. And actually, our editor at the University of Minnesota Press looked at those labels and she goes, "Is that true? We should check that." Because it seemed we didn't know. So, and it's interesting that you say that, because she said, "Oh, maybe that has in the year since we took this on," but no, still not exactly.
No. I think it will reappear for sure. I think it will definitely reappear, but no, not yet. But I can't offer any real in-depth information. I know it was Walter White who was at the helm of that exhibition happening. And interestingly enough, I did not go deep to find out who, in particular, in the College Art Association was involved in that, or whether it was simply, yes, you can use our name as being those who are behind you and endorse the work that's being done.
Oh, I see. Great. We have one, this is another one about language in the 35 exhibition in the titles. One from Megan Considine, who asked, "What do you make of the specific word commentary in the title of the NAACP exhibition?" She says, "It strikes me as a reserved term. Why not condemnation or reflection? Do you think this choice was significant, or was it just the feature of language at that time?"
I would say it was probably a feature of language. And that there was so much graphic work. The majority of the work was black and white lithographs, block prints, drawings, etc., that could be read as a comment on what is happening to Black people. Of course, never right there in New York, even though we have our own blemishes. but I believe that that was just a choice, that a title like that would invite more people to come and see the show and perhaps sign the petition while they're there, rather than condemnation, which the fact that lynching was in the title is pretty daring enough as it is. And so commentary does kind of temper it a little bit.
Yeah. Sarah Binkley asks a question. She says, I'm interested in the questions, this is a tough one, and issues surrounding an artist's identity and what it means for a white artist versus a Black artist to create and show and sell imagery depicting violence inflicted on Black bodies. Can you share your thoughts?
On whether I feel it's appropriate? Can you read that again for me?
Yeah. Opening up for you. I'm interested in the questions and issues surrounding artists' identities and what it means for a white artist versus a Black artist to create and show and sell imagery depicting violence inflicted on Black bodies. Can you share your thoughts about it?
One of the, I put on that slide specifically the statement or bits of the statement that Dana Schutz had said around why she chose, and there's quite a bit written about that piece and her decision to create Open Casket at all. And her whole idea was around creating a piece that was about shame. Mm-hmm. And I agree with the artist who protested in front of the piece that she did not have the right, because she had a reason behind doing the work. By that time, Dana Schutz was already a well-known artist. She was not debuting at the Whitney Biennial. She was a selling artist. She had something to express around her own feelings, that the history of people that she is connected to, people that are of European descent, and that she felt deeply enough about that she would make a work of art and then exhibit it to create a way to draw attention to an atrocity that actually did happen. And one of the things that she said that actually moved me to say, well, first of all, I didn't get why there was so much, I understood why people felt that it was amazing that it was a subject matter for a work of art. I got that. But she writes about how this happened before she was born. And she went through the school system in this country and never heard about it. Never heard about it. And I can imagine being an artist who does this kind of social impact work as she does, to feel that she had to express it in some way and in the way that she knows how as a painter. So I get both sides of the story, but I do believe that an artist should be allowed to express themselves about the things that are meaningful to them. And she has been willing to talk about her choices and to exhibit her work that creates this kind of dialogue, this bringing back up of violence against Black people. It had a purpose beyond just being a spectacle.
Interesting. Yes, there is an anonymous attendee that asked a question about this same issue, but asking if you could expand your view about non-Black artists and should not engage with themes pertaining to Black experience, which you just did. But the second part of the question was, in this context, is there a significance, do you think, that both Dana Schutz and Philip Guston are Jewish?
Do I think it matters that they were Jewish?
Yeah. Do you think there's any significance in that? Sounds like, Dana's work.
Well, if you go back to 1935, I mean, there has always been an alliance between Jewish people, especially those who are socially minded, and so there has always been a connection, and there's always been a kind of, we are Jewish people, so we're not regular white people. I have heard that from Jewish people who are close to me, whereas we understand because we have been oppressed as well. We have gone through devastating loss in our communities. We understand what it means to be considered subhuman. And so there is an alliance there that makes, I believe, some Jewish people feel closer to the plight of Black people. I hope that answers that question.
It's good. That sounds like a very important way to think about it, particularly in New York. That is true. I mean, that's a lot of those artists who were the white artists in those anti-lynching were Jewish. So yeah.
Yep.
For sure. Looking, there's so many good questions here. So I have another one for you. There's a lot about this question, so I don't want to double it up for you.
Really? Wow.
A lot of people are asking about that, but there's another one. Here's a good one. This is from an anonymous attendee. When it comes to issues around race and violence, do you feel that artists who choose to do this type of work also have some responsibility to learn more about histories of racial violence in order to understand the emotional impact of this work? There is plenty of opportunity to learn about race through organizations such as Undoing Racism. Isn't it a little bit a pass or passe that artists feel like their freedom to create becomes a type of lack of responsibility?
I actually don't feel that any artist who takes up imagery and subject matter that is not specifically attached to their own identity, I have never felt that there was an irresponsibility, that they were not cognizant of what they were doing. I'm not saying that these artists don't exist. I'm saying that I am not aware of those artists who are not sensitive to the fact that they are stepping into an arena where they are not implicated, where they are speaking for someone other than themselves. It's not a direction that is taken lightly. Especially if you're an artist who wishes to market your work. It just isn't taken lightly. You don't do that kind of thing to get a rise out of people unless you have something to say behind it. The backstory of work like that has got to come forward once the work is actually brought out into the open. So no, I don't believe that artists are that naive, at least not ones that are going to make work that's going to end up out in the open.
Yeah. Great. There's another one here from Matt Rohn, which is it's an art historical question, so you'll know this. You'll know what you start.
Or I'll say,
you don't need the
why?
picture, I don't think. This is a one for you to read. It's an interesting idea about images. He says, might GitApp, Hale Woodruff's GitApp, be quoting and turning on its head Thomas Hart Benton's Arts of Life in America, mural painted in 1932.
Turning on its head, in what way? They're coming from different perspectives for sure, but and they're both very much narrative artists. They're both doing works that are meant to be read and meant to, offer a way into looking at history, but from very different angles. I'm not quite sure that I can answer that question. I don't see Woodruff and Benton in dialogue based on that particular work of art that I showed. Benton was in the art commentary.
Yeah, that exhibition.
No, he was in it. He was in it. And I read that work extensively for some reason in '97. Yeah.
I have one here from Colleen McRae who asks, it's about this, but it's asking you specifically, how can white people be part of conversations and call to action without misappropriating, misinterpreting, misunderstanding, or misspeaking this history and its significance in today's need for change? Perhaps my question is not best written, but the intent is genuine, and hopefully an expression of respect and wish for greater understanding and learning.
Well,
I know.
Thank you first for saying that you want in. I just looking at the protests that took place after George Floyd's death. I can't. We're not going to turn away advocates. It doesn't make any sense. But the question was, how can you enter, and I would say probably enter into being a part of change, perhaps wanting to be a part of those collectives who are trying to create change, is know some history. Know some history. I mean, when I was a student, I'm still a student, we're always a student, but when I was a student, I had to know all of American art, all of the Western canon, and then my stuff. Right? All the African American stuff that mattered to me. But yet, my white colleagues did not. And I find that to be extremely unfair. There's some change happening. The survey texts are becoming more complex. They're becoming more diverse, more inclusive. I love that, That's happening slowly. But it's very painful, especially in art history, to remove some of those canonical artists. It's become very difficult to let go of some of the reproductions that you'll find in the survey texts that have come forward since I had mine in Jansen back in the 80s, where there was no Black artists in there, very few women, and a modicum of Americans. So change is happening. Change is happening. The thing is, no.
I'm that Jansen text right now to put my laptop on, so that's what it's useful for. Those old Jansen texts, I totally understand that and what you're saying. There are two more, if you think you have the energy for it, Margaret, that I want to
Sure. Well, if I can't answer them coherently, I will say goodnight.
Yeah, so the one that I do would be interesting. I think I brought this up before, mentioned this. How do you see the distinction of the Black interpretation of the art on lynching in 1935 in the exhibition in comparison to the Black versus white gaze in the present day ideo recordings of police murders? Maybe it's a typo meaning idea. I think Black versus white gaze in the present day recordings of police murders.
I don't know if I could. First of all, I believe that there was more of an empathetic tone to the work that was created for the 1935 exhibition, that it was more studied. I think also more careful, the work that was being done. There was also a level of connection to historical works of art as well, in terms of the framing and the compositions and all the light and dark. There was more care with it as being art. Because I would say that that none of the artists who were in that exhibition, the white artists, saw a lynching. So a lot of that was coming from the photographs that were available, the texts that were written about them, etc. Whereas now, the eye of your camera, your phone, the eye of your phone neutralizes in many ways who's holding the button down to take that video. You know, that we are in a very different place in terms of being willing to call out injustice, regardless of whether or not it is happening to someone in your clan or not. I believe, especially for the generations that are slightly younger than me, that we have advocates for change amongst all peoples. All peoples. Our communities are more diverse than they have ever been. I know I'm speaking from a very privileged area in terms of diversity, because New York is a melting pot. And I live in Queens, which is even more of a melting pot than any other part of New York City. So, but we are a nation on the move, and we are integrating and culturally diverse areas all over this country. And so we are getting to know each other as residents of this country in different ways than in the past. We are not as segregated as we used to be. That's not to say that segregation doesn't still exist, and there's still a lot of problems around economic inequality in this country that we still need to work on and to find ways to become more equitable economically, for sure. But in terms of the eye, the gaze is different. It's different, thank goodness. I mean, that was a long, long time ago, 1935. We've been through several wars since then. We have fought for this democracy. So if those kinds of struggles that we fought together can't make change, I don't know what can. Honestly, I really don't know what can.
Well, on that note, I'm going to ask you a question here that was one of the first ones that came in, and I've been watching it, and it's been getting thumbs up, and it's been staying at the top. But I was thinking it would be a nice last question for you. And it relates exactly to what you're saying. And I don't think you'll be surprised. It's from George White, and he says, "Your presentation was brilliant and moving. I see so
Hi,
many
George.
I see so many parallels, not only to the police killings of Black women and men, but also to the mob violence on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol. Do you think that is a fair comparison? I ask because I worry that as time goes on and the president was acquitted again, that memories of that anti-democratic event will recenter white privilege and anxiety instead of focusing on the specter of white mob violence."
Wow. Well, thank you, George, for that wonderful encapsulation of what, yes, when I dug out Go Davis's promo, which I had not viewed since 1999, and I heard Cameron say, "Get Cameron," I thought, "Get Pence." Immediately, when he was describing what the mob was like and how he remembered it, it made me think of January 6th immediately. Immediately. The idea of mob mentality and mob violence is very real. And the fact that it was so huge. And in our capital was amazing. It was amazing to me, saddening, and the acquittal is equally as saddening. But the fact that the work was done to attempt that impeachment, a second impeachment, I believe that will mark history and it will make a difference. So I'm very proud that at least it got that far. But yeah, you are absolutely right. From that 1999 image, I did see today.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, we have reached our time, and I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Vendryes,
It was my pleasure.
for sharing this space with us, and for bringing us along on this teaching moment. And there's a lot for us to reflect on here. So I just humbly want to say thank you again for joining us, and Diane for your moderation tonight. And thank you to all of you in the audience for holding this space with us. We would love to hear your feedback to help improve our programs and make sure that we're providing educational resources that are meaningful and important to you. And if you answer the survey that we send, you can also be entered to win a $20 gift certificate to our WAM shop. So with that, we wish you all well, stay hopeful, stay positive, and until we're together again, good night. Finish?
Mm-hmm.